Show, episode 6, this Wednesday, 5th of August, 2026. I'm your host, Adrian. Today, we are in for probably some of the biggest news to come out of video games in quite a while. This is a pretty historic day as we hit the completion of one of the biggest leverage buyouts in corporate history, with EA being sold to a consortium for quite a substantial chunk of change. $55 billion US dollars sold. Hammer is down. EA is in the hands of 90% the Saudi Arabian sovereign fund. What else? We've got Jared Kushner in the mix as well, and a Silicon Valley investment firm. $210 a share for those of you who, invested in EA's future. That's a pretty good chunk of change if you bought in before the deal was announced for about $168 US dollars a share, 25% premium. EA is private, so I went to, just before the deal was closed, or the day before, I was on their investor relations website today. I go to double check a figure as I write a story, and the website is down. If we take a look here, we can see if you go to ir.ea.com, it's just invalid URL. It does not exist anymore. So I had to work my way through the NASDAQ to find documents just to make sure my numbers are right. There's an article on leveluptimes.com, boardroom read, alongside the news, just giving my thoughts, writing thoughts to paper. $36 billion worth of the deal was done in equity, so cash or money exchanging hands, but $20 billion of debt falls into the lap of EA. Andrew Wilson, who's the chairman and CEO of EA, will stay in his position, at least for now. Nothing announced in terms of changes. In a memo he put out to staff, and then it was published on the EA website, said, "We're entering this new chapter, this next chapter, from a position of strength with partners who share our vision and ambition." And then, went on about the mission statement of the company, and nothing will change, and yada, 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 and we're still going to make great games. That remains to be seen. Not that, EA, look, all things considered, Andrew Wilson has been running the company fairly well. I think this last year they had Battlefield 6, which did quite well for them. I think some analytics firm put it at $350 million of US gross revenue within 3 days of release. And it was the first year last year where they actually beat Call of Duty, which is, it's a pretty momentous occasion for the company. That didn't stop them from firing a whole bunch of people pretty soon thereafter. I think when was it? Trying to find the dates here. They fired a bunch of people pretty quickly after the game released. So Battlefield 6. I think the game came out. When was it? Battlefield 6 released in. Let me get the figures here. I think it was like late 2025. Yeah, October 2025. And then in March, they fired a whole bunch of people from Battlefield, unknown number of individuals across the Battlefield studios. So they had Criterion, DICE, obviously, Ripple Effect and Motive Studios all had a bit of a layoff where they said that we're making select changes to Battlefield to better align our teams, yada, yada, yada. So you may make a hit game, and that won't necessarily protect your job. It's going to be an interesting period of time here. So let's break down the numbers. So Saudi Arabia's sovereign fund, known as PIF, holds 93% of the company. I think it owned 10% of the company pre-acquisition, so it's rolled over its shares in and now owns 93% total. Silver Lake, which is a Silicon Valley tech investment firm, another 5% there, roughly. And Jared Kushner, who's obviously the son-in-law of US President Donald Trump, with a percent stake in the company, roughly. So now they've got a $20 billion hole of debt that they will need to pay back. A lot of people talking, armchair analysts saying they're going to, tear the company to bits and sell it off. I don't think that's necessarily the first port of call for particularly the Saudis. If we look at their investments across entertainment in the West, they they put a bunch of money into golf. I don't think that particularly went well. It may have done well monetarily. It did not do well in terms of people's perception of golf. You think that golf can't go further back downwards, and yet they found a way to do it. And they've been putting money into the WWE wrestling for years now. So I if I have to sort of make guesses, and I am no analyst, I've worked in corporate for many, many years, is that one of the things that was interesting was putting Andrew Wilson front and center post-acquisition. It sort of points to a strategy that's going to be, they will need to pay the debt back, and they're going to do that through their biggest IP. So I wouldn't necessarily expect, EA's smaller brands coming out. I think that they will continue to pop out Battlefields. I think they will continue to pop out EA Sports, which is huge, particularly the football game, the EA Sports FC series. That's doing very, very well for them. It did quite well in their last financial report. Obviously, they don't have to do financial reports. They don't have to do earnings calls now that they're a private company. So, there's a few ways to look at it. Number one is, hey, we are kind of we're private, so we can take a longer term view. We're not necessarily beholden to the shareholders every quarter saying we're growing every year, financial year, putting more, making the number go up. In that way, I think that they can take a longer term view, and that means maybe they let games simmer to pay off. Battlefield 6 obviously was in the oven for quite a while and did quite well. Maybe we see some more Sims, and maybe we see some EA Sports FC. The interesting thing here will be, obviously, the sports washing that Saudi Arabia tends to do when they purchase or when they take stakes in major entertainment within the West. They've got a really... They're trying to, diversify their investments out of the traditional sort of Saudi oil and yada, yada, yada. And B, so they need to look for other avenues. That well is quite literally going to dry up. But B, they need to look at... I don't think they will necessarily, push for a very conservative take on a lot of these things. And not to an extent that EA wasn't already doing, right? Look at Mass Effect, look at The Sims. The Sims obviously has a very... a very high degree of people that are, within the LGBTIQA plus sort of identity and all those sorts of things. So it's going to be a very interesting long-term view to see where that Saudi influence starts to creep into the company. But this is a company that has always been quite conservative if you look at the titles that it puts out and how it's evolved over time. Mass Effect is another obvious example of that. So I don't necessarily expect change from one day to the next. This is something that will rear its head over time, in my opinion. But they've got a lot of debt to pay back. It doesn't mean that I don't necessarily agree with the outright. They won't be able to pay this debt back, and it's just going to end up in a mess. I think we have to wait and see. I suspect this is a long-term investment. This is not something that changes overnight. But there you have it. We've got all the numbers. If you're interested in the breakdown, it's all there on the leveluptimes.com. The story is called EA's Gone Private, the biggest leveraged buyout in history has closed. And we go into the details. I put a bit of an analysis piece there in terms of what this means for the company. It's going to be a wait and see. I do think we'll see some layoffs. But on the other side of it, I think, you cannot lay off all your talent when you are trying to, make big games that are going to hit hard, and they have to hit hard for this deal to work. So it's a lot of risk, but I don't think it's necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of how they do it. And we'll keep reporting on it. We'll let you know as soon as the first layoffs drop. Not to make light of a very important of a very very important piece of news. But we'll keep reporting on it on the leveluptimes.com. While we're on the nature of investor relations, Sony has come out and sort of given the first kind of statements off the back of its decision to stop printing PlayStation discs in 2028. CFO Lin Tao gave an earnings call. She's the CFO of Sony. And Kotaku actually reported on this, did some translation. So some of the wording is a bit interesting. But one of the questions that came out was obviously, hey, how are you going to deal with this big change to the business in the midst of all the backlash? And we've seen backlash. We reported last week there's a boycott that's being planned, I think, for this month now. Let's take a look at it. There was a change.org piece or petition that was at 350,000 last time we reported. It's now almost at 360,000, or it's at 355. Now it's at 358,000, almost 359. It's certainly gathering momentum. I think we've hit sort of a critical mass on the numbers. We'll continue to, keep listening to the podcast for our petition watch. But they were quizzed, and sort of the answer out of Lin Tao was, it's not just for PlayStation, all kinds of content. Digitalization is progressing. And in terms of any chance of retreating from the decision, we will continue to cautiously move this forward. So that has not stopped the internet from continuing to push back, as the internet is one to do. But fairly coy response. One thing to point out here, this is stuff that they are talking to investors. They're not talking to the gamers. And they have not said anything beyond their original statement that they were going to do it. We heard last week there was some commentary regarding how they were dealing with their social media strategy, keep quiet, use this language, those sorts of things. They did a bit of announcement last week. There was a God of War release date that was announced, etc. But in terms of necessarily 100% direct full comments to the decision, there's been absolutely nothing. We know that there are some ways for publishers to still get copies of physical games post January 2028, but that is for games that were printed prior to. So, there will be some supply there for some time, but there will be no new games being printed, which, this continues to point, I said this last week, this continues to point to a future where the PS6 is a digital-only console. I don't see that changing. They also said in that same call that they have enough memory to meet sales, which is good to know. We know from Xbox's comments that the component crisis is continuing to hamper their costs. And we're starting to see, I'm not going to go into too much of the details, but there was... we reported on this some weeks back. They were increasing the consoles, the price of the consoles, and we gave the US pricing. We do have the Australian pricing now, so the price is going up by between $150 to $250. So it's a substantial increase, about a 25 to 30% increase in the cost of the consoles. The S's are going up from $549 to $699 for the 512 gig version, and $599 to $849 for the 1TB S models. And obviously for the X's, they will continue to sell the disc version, the disc model of the console at 1TB for 1,099 Australian bucks, up from 849. And the 1TB digital model, so the digital only console, goes up to 999. So $1,000, 1,000 buckaroonies. And that's up, I believe, from $750. So again, a substantial increase there. Some retailers are still selling, and this is courtesy of Press Start, some retailers are still selling the console at older prices. So if you are in the market for an Xbox, probably jump on that now before they go up. But other retailers have already increased the cost of the console. So we knew that was coming up. We didn't have the Aussie pricing. We now have the Aussie pricing. We'll probably update our article on Level Up Times just to reflect that as an update. And as we previously reported, the 2TB model is completely phased out. So again, cost of storage, cost of memory, everything is rising. We know that Xbox have said they actually gave a multiplier on it. I think they said in an Xbox Wire article that the cost of stuff was going up. Was it up to 5 times? Yeah, here we go. As we plan for the 2027 holiday season, so this is next year, we expect another increase, taking us over 5 times the prices we paid only 2 years earlier. So, insane cost increase here. And we'll continue to keep an eye on it. But, you know, digital only is sort of moving forward. We also know, as I segue into the Xbox world, the disc to digital project is continuing to advance. This, I think the code name was Project Positron, if I'm not mistaken. There's talk that it's coming out. It's moving forward. Last week we saw the announcement that some Xbox original, so Xbox, not one, but the first Xbox games were on Game Pass. They think they put 4 games out, and they're basically emulating them. We know now that the emulation that is happening is coming from the Xbox 360 emulator, which is running Xbox games inside of it. So kind of like Inception of Xboxception happening. And so now the momentum is building up for what is Xbox's broader plans for disc to digital. We know from a bunch of the leaks that have been coming out, and these are rumors, of course, that the Xbox One and Xbox Series games, you'll be able to put them into an Xbox console reportedly, and you will get a digital license. So it'll check the serial number, the part of the disc that cannot be copied. Each disc that's printed has a sort of fingerprint on it. They look at that and give you a digital license, and then say if you give that disc to a friend, then the disc license will then transfer. So that digital license will go to your friend's Xbox, or if you sell it, it'll go to their Xbox. And so that's starting to happen. There is talk that there was a beta coming out in last month. That beta did not eventuate, but that plan is still progressing. Microsoft, and this is all rumor world. We really don't know what Xbox is planning yet until they announce it. We may see something announced fairly soon. One of the things that were being talked about was Microsoft was looking at keeping a disk drive around as possibly some sort of market push against Sony. Sony famously did this to Xbox back when Xbox One announced that they were going digital only. In their original sort of announcement, did that skit where I think Shuhei was given a copy of a game. This is how you share a game with a friend, and then they gave him a physical copy of the game at E3. Simpler times. But it sounds like Microsoft is actually thinking about, from a strategic perspective, keeping a disk drive around so they can sort of shove it in Sony's face. It's an interesting piece of differentiation if they keep it. I don't think it makes a huge amount of difference, but it may help their goodwill, and they certainly need some of it right now. Got something in my eye. There's talk that Xbox 360 games will run on the new Project Helix console. This is coming out of theverge.com. Leaked documents are coming out left, right, and centre about this thing, but again, this is all reports until we see what that rollout actually looks like. And it sounds like for the 360 games that developers can, quote, this is from The Verge, opt into making them backward compatible, and they will have control over things like a game's price and if it's available on Game Pass. So that'll be rolling out if these reports are to be believed. Interesting. I think, personally speaking, just purely off what I like to see, I think it's a cool system. I don't have an issue with it. The digital-only transition is happening. I don't think that's necessarily changing long-term. But if Xbox can sort of use this as a lever over PlayStation, that might help them in this particularly tough time that they find themselves in. Sony, we know, reported on this time and time again on the last week's podcast and some podcasts back. The bill of materials did leak for the PS6. It sounded like it was $1,000 just to make the damn thing, and I'm curious if that price actually already does not have a disk drive factored into that cost. If we're looking at price of consoles, Xbox Series X is now like over $1,000 in Australia. I very much see launch PS6s launching at 1,500 even Aussie dollars. So we'll see. It'll definitely be over $1,000 even in the US. The fact that Lintao is saying it's cautiously proceeding, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting, but I don't think that, as I said this last week, I don't see them changing dramatically the strategy. Remember, a lot of these decisions are being made years, in some cases, in advance of a console because they have to plan this thing out and get all the parts and so on and so forth. So I suspect the PS6, at least at launch, will not have a disk drive. But hey, Sony's got the memory, so at least they can keep making them. And I'm curious to see, there's talk from an Xbox Project Helix perspective, what they're going to do to keep the cost down. That's another lever they have. Microsoft could easily look at things like, and this is complete guesswork here, this is not based on any reporting, but they could easily do a version of the Helix that has no that is ad supported pre-roll ads. Who knows? But that's another option they have to keep the cost down for the Xbox. I think Sony, if they wanted to go down that road, they're a different company. It would be a very, very different solution that they would have in mind. And what is the PS6? There's a lot of talk about is it a handheld that is just a very powerful handheld. We have to wait and see, but it probably won't be too long. If they're looking at a holiday 2027 launch for the PS6, we probably start to hear about it end of this year, and we start to get those, I was going to say magazine covers, but I don't know if we're there anymore. The good old days, even the PS5, I think, had was it a Wired article where they actually tore it down with Mark Cerny. Curious what the approach will be. We've heard very little from Mark Cerny, almost said Mark Sony, on the PS6, but surely he comes out and talks about how fast the machine is and what it's capable of. Maybe gives us a 2-hour lecture about AMD hardware. We'll see. So that's Sony, that's Xbox, and off the back of Xbox's big reset, next piece of news here is about Double Fine. They went independent, obviously. We discussed this some weeks back. We put an article on the website, leveluptimes.com, around how Double Fine was basically given some runway and said we need to part ways. So, we talked about how it's almost like an olive branch, so that they don't look like the company that's killing Double Fine. Well, it's been some weeks since, and Double Fine has let go 23 of its staff post-independence. This is coming from GameIndustry.biz. 23 roles have been eliminated at Double Fine. Tim Schafer, who's the CEO and founder of that studio, did come out on social media and actually gave, say what you will about CEOs and so on, but there was what sounded pretty heartfelt response, which reads, "Today, Double Fine Productions let go of 23 members of our staff. As a small, tightly knit team, these actions are not taken lightly. Only the survival of our studio would ever make us consider such a painful action. Our transition to becoming an independent company also means becoming a size we can sustain. The people we are losing were all important. They all made an impact on our games and culture, and they will be missed. We are committed to supporting each affected person as best we can. We thank them for their hard work and commitment to the creative spirit we cherish here at Double Fine." So we'll see what comes out of it. Double Fine did keep its IP as part of the transition, so at least some silver lining there. And obviously over at Xbox, it's a bit of a shambles at the moment. 3,200 jobs are being cut, half of which were done when the reset was announced. I keep using the word reset because that's the term Asher Sharma's using. And there were 5 studios that were divested, of which Double Fine was one of them. I remember watching, there's a documentary series, I can't remember who produced it, that had sort of Double Fine going through their independence, and it's a hard business, man. As someone that owned a game studio, it is not easy. And it's never fun to lay off people unless you're particularly psychopathic. So I kind of take Tim's statement on face value here. Threading this back to the whole EA thing, a divested studio cutting, 23 staff to survive, while we've got EA taking on $20 billion worth of debt. Like, someone's paying for this at the end of the day. And usually, as we've seen, and I said this on the article today about the EA purchase, it's usually the staff that pay for it, unfortunately. So we'll keep an eye on it. Double Fine. I'm curious what they do next. If I'm being completely blunt, like the games that they had put out recently, they were fantastic games, but they were not, let's say, of the caliber that perhaps you want to, that you could easily monetize. Let's put it that way. And so we'll see. We'll see what comes out of Double Fine post acquisition. I wonder if they will be speeding up their development. And speeding up while you're cutting staff is never easy either, so we'll see. Finally, for a bit of a lighter news, Dungeons & Dragons Wizards of the Coast have put out or taken their Universes Beyond concept, which of course is, if anyone is familiar with tabletop gaming, Magic the Gathering is another Wizards property. They went down that Universes Beyond route some years back, started bringing in, I think more recently they had a bunch of Marvel sets. They had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They had the Lord of the Rings. They've got The Hobbit coming out. It's sort of the way that they are able to bring in IPs that are not Wizards owned and tie it into a Magic the Gathering set. So it's done very well for them if you look at it from a business perspective. Where it's not particularly done well for them has been around, I guess, the commentary online or the backlash that they've faced around it. So what they're doing with Dungeons & Dragons is really interesting. They have started they've moved to sort of a seasonal model where every season, every 3 months or so, they put out a new book. It could be an adventure book. It could be what they're calling expansions to the core tabletop RPG. And they are kicking it off with World of Warcraft. So what is old is new again. And they partnered up with Blizzard to put out World of Warcraft Dungeons & Dragons, or Dungeons & Dragons : World of Warcraft. It's an expansion that comes with all of the WoW classes that you know and love. They're coming into Dungeons & Dragons. That means 9 new and revised subclasses. There's 40 specializations, 16 species, 60 new spells. And from a DM side, you've got 50 plus monsters, 23 factions, which is insane, 7 dungeons, which obviously, that's probably where you see the most. For me, as someone who DMs from time to time, I have always been an adventure person. Like, I love writing adventures. I love reading adventure books just to read adventure books and get ideas and maps and so on. So they are putting out 7 dungeons, 30 boss stat blocks, 25 magic items in the core set, and then they're also putting out a map pack, which I find the terminology very, very interesting, called the Icecrown Citadel. Obviously, it's a classic raid from WoW, which is a digital adventure level 16 to 20 that takes you through, I think, one of the wings, I believe, of the Icecrown Citadel. The way they've worded it is very interesting, but it should take you up to the Lich King. If what I'm understanding is correct. And that also comes with some poster maps, some token sheets, and 16 more items as well there. So it's, of all of the ways that you could introduce an IP sort of cross, I think WoW is probably the perfect option. I think that their leadership is certainly looking at the wonders that Universes Beyond has done from a business perspective for Magic and translating that into D&D. D&D some years back, I think 2 years ago, did the revision to the 5th edition book, 5.5e, or, if you want to call it that. I think they've actually started using 5.5e. I saw on their website they had a tab and it said 5.5e on the character creator, which was interesting. Because they are very, very clear that it is not 6th edition, or they were at the time when they were publishing it. It's out in November, and there's some early access, which they've been doing for a while, if you purchase the digital version through D&D Beyond, which is sort of their digital platform for D&D. And they also, alongside this, announced their 2027 slate of content that's coming out for the game. They're coming back to Dark Sun, which was a very, it's an M-rated world, which is kind of out of, it's kind of left field for the stuff that Wizards have done, sort of more recently. So that's interesting. They did some commentary. Obviously, they did some dumb marketing. They put out a pretty cool sort of anime style or Saturday morning cartoon trailer for Dark Sun, which was very graphic, which kind of bodes well if they are committing to this location, or not location, but this kind of brand of D&D, you kind of want to do it right, because I feel like the people that are really going to get into it appreciate that. And so, yeah, it's a very, very dark post-apocalyptic kind of world. They're also putting out a Greyhawk, and they're also going in another Universes Beyond set later on. They're going to be putting out, Season of Rebellion, a Star Wars set or expansion to Dungeons and Dragons as well. Very, very interesting. I think I actually, I'm all for it if they can pull it off, if the content is authentic, and obviously I think people are going to buy it up. I don't think that's a concern. Finally, they announced a kind of a set. I think it's called Dungeons & Dragons Icons, which is being run by Joe Manganiello, obviously Manganiello, actor, obviously big D&D fan, and he is working with classic D&D creators on various. They're saying sort of, I don't know if they're using the term remaster, but they're certainly calling it a return to some of these classic worlds. So they're working, for example, Tracy Hickman on Dragonlance, obviously a classic setting if you follow, or if you've been following Dungeons and Dragons. He's gonna work with Luke Gygax, who's obviously the son of the grandfather of Dungeons and Dragons, to unvault some unreleased Greyhawk notes. And I think R.A. Salvatore is going to come back and do some more Drizzt stuff. And then finally, from a video game perspective, Warlock, which has been sort of teased for a while now, it's a video game that is set in the Dungeons & Dragons world. The developers of which created the Dark Alliance reboot. I don't know if it's a reboot, but it was a new take on Dark Alliance, which kind of was not great. I remember playing it and dropping it fairly quickly. It just seemed very rushed and messy. But they are working on a new game called Warlock. It is getting some gameplay reveal at Gamescom, opening night live on August 25th. And they announced some of the cast there, with Trisha Helfer as Katri and Maggie Robertson as Tasha. The developers of the studio is called now Invoke Studios. It used to be called Tuque, Tuque. They did the Dark Alliance game. So I'm curious. I mean, I'm not necessarily holding out a lot of hope for this thing, but I'm curious to see the gameplay. Always open for some more Dungeons & Dragons video games. Again, the criticism is where this... I have not seen the criticism for this that I see time and time again when a new Universes Beyond Magic set comes out, or gets announced. MTG players have always said that it sort of erodes the game's identity. My argument for this is that Magic the Gathering is a game that was obviously created through its identity. It had a very, very unique style, unique world, unique lore, and then they started slipping in the Universes Beyond. Dungeons & Dragons is a game that is what you make it. If you want to keep it 100% authentic to whatever world you want to make it, you do that. If you want to play World of Warcraft, people are already doing that, right? I'm sure if I go on Reddit right now, I can find 100 fan-made source books about Dungeons & Dragons classes coming into Dungeons & Dragons. So I feel like this is a slightly different... proposition. Will Azeroth dilute Dungeons & Dragons? I don't think it will. I think, if anything, it gives those players an opportunity to have, if you like, quote unquote, the official word on how that world interacts with Dungeons & Dragons. But it does not take away from the world that you make. If you're making a homebrew world, if you're following a source book to the T, you can continue to do that. And I think that's what differentiates Dungeons & Dragons doing this from a game like Magic the Gathering. And, on the other hand, World of Warcraft is probably one of the most authentic, legitimate crossovers you could do. World of Warcraft owes so much of its identity to Dungeons & Dragons. And the Warcraft brand, even before that, owes so much of it to Tolkien and Dungeons & Dragons. So I feel like that will be fine. Where it'll get interesting will be the Star Wars set. Late next year or sometime next year, which will be where the brand, I think, will become more messy. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's a pretty cool idea. I'm keen to see it. I'm a D&D fan. What can I say? I've grown up with it. I played probably since 3.5e. Although I really do love reading like AD&D adventure books and OSR stuff. I got into a real rabbit hole years and years ago. So let's see what happens. I'm going to check it out. Dungeons & Dragons World of Warcraft launches in November. All right, let's talk about games coming out this week. We publish a drop on the website, leveluptimes.com, every week. We tell you sort of what's coming out, what to keep an eye on, what's on our radar, and you can also sign up to leveluptimes.com. You can add those games to your wish list or your library, and you can track your backlog. There's a whole bunch of cool features on the website, so please do check it out, leveluptimes.com. Here's what's coming out this week. We're starting off with Beast of Reincarnation. This is out now. It's on Game Pass, if you're interested, but it's also out on PC, PS5, Xbox Series. This is Game Freak's, the Pokemon people, their first big non-Pokemon game in quite a while. They've dabbled. They are not, contrary to a lot of people's beliefs, they are not owned by Nintendo. They just have a very high stake ownership in Pokemon. So a lot of people sort of conflate the two. Game Freak can do whatever the hell they want, and they are swinging with Beast of Reincarnation. It's interesting. The reactions, I've looked at some of the reviews. They wildly go from mediocre to really, really good. And usually when I see reactions like that, I start to think about whether this is going to be, something that might be okay. So we'll see. This is a post-apocalyptic action RPG where you play as a person named Emma and her dog, and you go around in the year 4026 Japan, and there's sort of like a hybrid action combat system with a command base where you sort of tell your dog what to do and sort of how to attack or who to attack. I'm going to check it out. I've not spoiled myself on this. I am going to probably do a blind dates on it, and just check it out. It's out on Game Pass. It's out now. Check it out. This one is pretty interesting to me. Big Walk. This is a homegrown game from Melbourne studio House. You may know of them as the developers of the Untitled Goose Game. Honk Honk. This is a co-op walker. Playable from 2 players up to 12. It does not have matchmaking that I can tell, so you need to have some friends if you're going to play this. And the idea of it is you're walking across a kind of like Aussie bushland. I think I read somewhere that it was based off some New South Wales national park as sort of the inspiration for this game. And the kind of the interesting hook is that it's got proximity voice chat that adjusts to your environment. So they were showing, there's a video out they put out a while back when they first announced the game where, some of your party is behind a soundproof wall, and so you have to interact using your hands and gestures to sort of solve puzzles and move forward. And then it's got a bit of that. It's got a bit of like, I don't know, Peak, if you think of it that way. But yeah, it's a co-op walker, cross-play supported, but friends are required for this one. And it's out now on PC, PS5, and Switch 2. Interestingly, no Xbox release on this one, which I thought was quite interesting. Gunstoppable. This is a speed-based action game. I actually found a post that they had put out on Reddit talking about the game. It sounds like they are an ex-God of War developer, so a AAA background, but single developer, sliding, wall-running, grappling, kind of speed-based shooter action game where you fight billionaire bosses, which is pretty interesting. So maybe a little political. In a fun kind of way, and it's out on PC and Xbox, and that is out today, Wednesday, on PC and Xbox. And I don't know if this game is on. Let me have a quick check here. Is it on Game Pass? I don't think it's on Game Pass, but we'll double check. No, it's not on Game Pass, but you can pick it up, and I do believe it is. I'll give you the price details because why not? It is. Oh, we don't. It's coming out in less than an hour, so I don't have a price for you, but it is out. There's a demo out now. You can add it to your library. I wonder if they'll go down the route that I talked about in the last episode where there was a game. I can't remember the name of the game now. It seems to be a thing now. You have a demo before the game comes out. Then the game comes out, you stop the demo. So you stop people from trying your game because it's out and you can buy it. I'm curious if they go down this road. I'll update you guys next week on the podcast. But yeah, Gunstoppable. It's out now on, or it'll be out in an hour on PC and Xbox. Marvel Tōkon Fighting Souls. This one, this one is getting a lot of traction, probably not for the right reasons. So this game went out in a beta format last week when the PlayStation outage happened, which we reported on, and that was not great. And I think the PC performance has not been great. So they actually put out a statement on Steam earlier this week or on the weekend. Thank you to everyone who jumped into the open beta and joined the fight. This is exactly why we run these. To our PC players, a message received. The team is already hard at work on the performance you deserve with day one updates, and then they put a bunch of stuff that they're going to be doing, including increased compatibility when streaming with OBS and Discord. So yeah, this is a 4 versus 4 sort of tag team fighter in the Marvel universe. There's 20 characters at launch. They've announced already some of the characters that are coming out post-launch, including... let me see if I can find them here. Have they announced? Yeah. So they are announcing 4 characters. I think they teased some of them, and then there's some pre-order bonuses, etc., that you can get as well, like an Infinity Gauntlet, lobby equipment, Cosmic Surfboard, a lobby ride, and a Baby Groot lobby pet. And then there's a deluxe edition. You can get Howard the Duck avatar. I wonder if is Howard the Duck in the game? I need to know. This changes everything. No, I don't think so. And a Cosmo lobby pet as well. So interesting. We'll see what happens. There is a year one. I think there's a pass that you'll be able to get as well, which they're saying will come with 4 characters, lobby avatars, and a stage pass, and a set of results screen character poses. Love it. So yeah, this is out on PC and PS5. It is published by Sony, but developed by Arc System Works. And there was some talk that the street date broke, but I don't think the servers are up, so I don't think that actually matters. So let me have a look. So some stuff had leaked. Some retailers were shipping it early. But anyway, the game is out on Friday. Curious to see if any of our readers or listeners are checking this one out. I am not a fighting game person, so I'm perfectly happy watching people stream this, and I don't have to embarrass myself on stream. Or maybe I do. We'll see. But it's out on Friday. Finally, some mentions here for Final Fantasy 14 online, which is coming to Switch 2. This is interesting. There's a community Q&A that came out on Reddit. So this is a subscription game. It's always been a subscription game. But for people that already pay for a subscription and have characters on another platform, you are able to play it, but you have to pay another subscription fee on Switch only. And it sounds like it'll be costed at 50% of what they normally charge for like a regular player on Switch. And the reason they've done it is because they are not charging... they don't require a Nintendo Switch Online subscription to play the game because there's a free trial, etc. So in a way to get through that, they said, okay, we will charge a subscription fee regardless of where you're coming from and whether you're paying a subscription fee for the game already. And then if you link to an existing subscription, you still have to pay a fee, but it'll be half price. So interesting. And then finally, Lies of P, which comes out on Thursday. This is a Switch 2 version. It's a complete edition. It comes with the Overture prequel. If you want the physical version, the game keycard version, that'll come out in October. So hold your horses for those not joining this new digital revolution that we find ourselves in. But yeah, if you want to check out all these games and more, go head over to the leveluptimes.com website, look for the drop. And as I said, sign up for an account. You can add those games to your backlog or your library, and games that are not on that list, and track your backlog there. I've been doing that, as I pick up games, playing Halo, put that on my backlog, and I've been tracking it there. Speaking of what I've been playing, I've been playing 2 games this week. Halo Campaign Evolved was the first one. I had to know. We talked a lot about this game on previous podcasts. We talked about it's coming to PlayStation for the first time. It sounds like it's not particularly selling like hotcakes on PlayStation, which is interesting. But again, this is a 20-something-year-old game, 25-year-old game now. So I just don't know who this game is for, and I mean that regardless of platform. I'm almost done with the campaign. I'm playing it on normal difficulty. It's an authentic remake, and it's got the quality of life that you kind of expect for a a kind of modern remake of a classic game. But it still feels like Halo. I think the problems here are there's a fair few technical issues that I'm experiencing. I am on a 5080, current drivers, good PC, and there is a significant issue I noticed on 2 occasions where the input just started to delay. So I would press W to walk forward, and then literally seconds later, the Master Chief would move. That sort of was in one area right at the start of the second mission, and it kind of smoothed its way over. I was able to get through it, and then went back to normal. And then every time I get in a vehicle, the controls are horrendous. So if you're on PC, if you're used to a controller, you'd know that the vehicle kind of moves where you aim. That's always been sort of typically how Halo works on for controls on a controller. On PC, you use the WASD keys to actually control forward, backward, left, and right. But that input lag is so bad that sometimes you are moving to the right to turn a corner, and it won't move, and then it'll move all at once, and then all of a sudden I'm doing, I'm donutting, burning rings out on the sand. I don't know what's happening. So I'm hoping they fix that. Other than that, the game looks pretty good. It does have those Unreal Engine kind of vibes to it. So there's a lot of ghost artifacting. There's a weird kind of static. And if you played UE5 games, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's some, if you walk or if you get shot at, particularly the hunters when they throw those little green blobs at you, and it hits you to the side, you'll kind of get this weird glitchy, almost staticky effect on the screen for a few seconds after. It's very strange, but it's something that is, it's like a calling card of Unreal Engine. So yeah, I mean, look, other than that, it does look very pretty. There's a lot of areas, particularly sort of the dungeon areas where you're going in these spaceships and all that, where you can kind of tell they've done what they can with the architecture, but these level designs are really, it shows its age even in a modern engine. My question is really, who the hell is this for? I feel like if you want an authentic Halo CE experience, Master Chief Collection has been there for years. Obviously, that launched to its own problems, but it's very playable. If the argument is, well, we want is it a test bed of UE5? I would say sure, but why are you charging full price for it? Understand it's on Game Pass. But then it's on PlayStation, and no one seems to be very interested. I'm looking up now the sales of Campaign Evolved on PS5. Looks like it sold about 350,000 copies. 450,000 total, I'm reading here from LNA Analytics. That doesn't seem great. Sales on PlayStation trail behind cross-gen PC console numbers on Xbox, about 900, so double the sales on Xbox platforms. And it did outperform Steam, another 200,000 copies on Steam. The PlayStation game that was a bit of a shock was when Activision remastered the Black Ops games, Black Ops 1 and 2, I think it was a few weeks ago now, maybe a month ago, on PlayStation, and it sold like millions of copies. Clearly, the excitement for Master Chief is not as exciting as that. So again, I'm sort of left wondering, who is Halo Campaign Evolved for? It's a little buggy, it's a little rough around the edges. It sounds like reported on this a few weeks ago. There was some prototypes that were being done for sort of the future of Halo and what are the sort of projects we're going to take on. And it sounded like Campaign Evolved was struggling, so they took some resources, they cancelled one of the projects there, and it kind of feels like, to what end? Like, what was that for? Who did that actually benefit? Don't know. Yeah, I'll be curious to see how it goes. There was a little bit of Twitch fun, people trying to do the lasso challenge, getting all the skulls and beating a non-legendary and turning them all on. It's died down. There's no multiplayer, of course. There is co-op, but there's no multiplayer in this particular version of the game. So I feel like multiplayer is such a core element of a Halo release that not having it seems like a little bit of a misgiving. Yeah, not too sure. I'm gonna finish the campaign. I'm gonna finish it and give some more thoughts on it probably next week. But yeah, Halo Campaign Evolved. It's a bit of a dud. It's a well executed dud. And last but not least, I've been playing Mistfall Hunter. This is a extraction game. It's a action RPG. If you're familiar with games like Dark and Darker, there's one other that eludes me. But if you're familiar with those kind of games, it's very much that with a fresh coat of paint. It handles a lot better than Dark and Darker ever did. Although you might argue Dark and Darker, the fact that it ran janky was actually part of its charm. It seems to be doing well at the moment. It's published by Skystone Games, which is owned by Diablo's creator, David Brevik. So it does. I mean, it has all of that sort of energy to the way the classes work. So there's a ranger class, there's a caster class, there's a warrior class. I've been playing the warrior class. I think it's a good all rounder, particularly if you're just getting into the game. I was watching Spud Hunter, who's an Aussie streamer, play the game. He was playing some of the archery class yesterday. It looks pretty good. It does look like it handles quite well. The PvP aspects are fun. They sort of have a really deep strategy to them. It's not just run up to someone and slash them. There's a lot of movement abilities that you have. So when you get hit a bunch, you can press the shift key, at least on keyboard and mouse, and dodge out of a combat combo. And then you've got a bunch of activate abilities that you can also trigger. Well, this is where it gets sort of controversial. The game is a full-price game. It's on Game Pass as well, but it has a lot of mobile-style microtransactions. They are all cosmetic so far, but it does give that sort of scummy, it's like a patina of scumminess to the game, where you're kind of you don't trust it, because everything kind of leads you to the store tab and there's a very deep character customization, which is cool, don't get me wrong, but then they sort of, I think there was a piece of cosmetics that's like thousands of bucks. Let me double check that. Mistfall Hunter cosmetic expensive. Let's see what. Yeah, $1,000 skins. Which is crazy. There it is. The Stardust Genesis is the skin. It is more than $1,000 to unlock it. And there's like a whole quest line or steps that you have to do to actually buy it. But I mean, cool, I guess. I don't know who's buying it. I'm curious. I've not seen anyone wear it in my games, but they do some very clearly. So there are no Aussie servers. There is Asia Pacific servers, and depending on where you are in the country, and particularly if you're like, I imagine it's even worse if you're in New Zealand, the ping is not fantastic. And I feel like a game like this, you need to launch with those servers, and if no one plays it, remove those servers and direct people to AP. But to not have OSH servers day one is kind of a misstep, particularly for a game that's doing quite well as it is. The Steam charts are sort of healthy. They're about 40,000. Again, I want to caveat that this is a Game Pass game, so those numbers are not reflective of PC Game Pass, and it's free on Game Pass. And also it's multi-platform, so your consoles are not included in this. There seems to be a little bit of attrition in that graph as well. Curious to see what that means going forward. And I'm curious to see if this game actually can perform over a long period of time. We've seen with games like Dark and Darker, the enthusiasm kind of dies off. even with patches, even with updates, it kind of dies off, and then you're kind of left, particularly if you've really invested in it, you're kind of left in the lurch with no one to play with. So the loop is quite cool. You go into a match, the PvE combat is quite fun, it's quite engaging. You loot up, you take as much as you can, then you find these, you ring a bell. Or I think you go to a summoning place, and that summons this little bell creature that you kill. If you kill the bell creature, you ring a bell for about 5-10 seconds. That will summon the portal, and you can escape and extract. If you're in a crew, so you can play solo or trios. If you're in a crew, you all have to ring the bell. It's not one person rings the bell and everyone can escape to the portal. You have to ring your own bell, and while you are ringing it, you are A, telling everyone around you where you are. They can hear you and hunt you down. And B, if you you can cancel while you're doing it, but that obviously takes some time. So you are vulnerable while you're ringing that bell. I'm curious about the revenue. I'm curious how well it'll do financially. Although I suspect we won't probably hear too much out of the studio or the publisher on that one. Again, there's a transparency gap. There's sort of just the way the business model is for this game just seems a little scummy. It's not pay to win. I'm not saying that, but it gives me that sort of ick. So we'll see how they continue to sort of support that game. They're doing a lot of events as well, where like they're dropping ciphers in the world, and if you pick up these ciphers, you can win like an Alienware computer or something. So it's kind of weird, but it's weird. The UI for that event has like, it's like a loot drop tile, and when you hover over it, it's like physical item, and then it's like a mouse or something. So they're trying to get people to stick around with those kind of events. There's a bunch of Twitch drops, and it's doing quite well on Twitch. There's always big streams, thousands of viewers, so it's doing quite well at the moment. Again, the question is, can they sustain that long term? And that's kind of it for what I've been playing. This week on the site, I'm going to try and I need to find some time and sit down with 70 Style Robot Anime Gappy X. This game, they've sent me a code for it, and I'm just like, I just need to find the time. And then another one I want to play is Verho Curse of Faces. We got a code for it on Switch 2. It is a low poly kind of Kingsfield inspired RPG. It looks really neat, but I'm trying to go in unspoiled, but I'll do a blind date on that one. And then we'll probably do a memory dump sometime on the site. That's a members-only podcast. You can sign up to the website and listen for free. And probably talk a bit about sort of where the industry is with EA. I also want to spend a bit of time talking about the Bethesda sort of situation. They put out a statement a few days ago that I kind of want to follow up on as well. So that's kind of what we're doing this week on Level Up Times. Again, we'll have another episode of the podcast next week. We'll have another issue of The Drop for all your game release news on Monday, as we usually do. And if you've got any mailbag, I think this week we have one question. So if you've got any questions for us, send it through to podcast@leveluptimes.com. That's podcast @leveluptimes.com. And one of the questions this week that we got was around the Sony disc situation. Sony's data says people buy digital. Aren't they just right? Yes, they are right. I think the data speaks for itself generally, that people are moving digital. The issue is not necessarily that physical necessarily should be eliminated because everyone's going digital. That's one quest. That's probably the moral argument, is why you're getting rid of physical. But minorities in a healthy market, in my opinion, should be continued to serve while there is some profit to be made. By all accounts, I don't think Sony is losing money on discs. The question is more, and I guess it makes some sense from Sony's perspective, from a cost-cutting perspective, but also from a hardware. If we don't have to support disk drives anymore, that's going to cut the cost of a console, particularly in a market where we're looking at $1,000 consoles plus. That's one part of it. But secondly, I feel like there is a competitive pressure that you get with a physical market that you do not get with digital. And I've spoken about this at length. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole. But if the PlayStation Store is the only way that you can buy a digital copy of a game, then the PlayStation Store has effectively a monopoly on the price of a game, and they run the sales and they run the cost. Whereas in a physical market, you have pressures like scarcity, you've got pressures like who's buying it, is it popular, is it not, can we do sales on these things? Pre-owned market is huge, and you have all of these sort of side markets that are not particularly great if you're a first party or if you're a publisher, because you're not getting a cut, you're not getting a taste off each of those pre-owned sales. But if you're just looking at, hey, we're selling this game, it's on sale, Sony's getting their per disc cut. Sony's still getting their license fee. Sony's still getting paid off of the disc. So I don't necessarily agree that Sony is not making money off discs. I haven't seen any data. No one's really mentioned that, not even Sony themselves in their financial call. So yes, the answer to your question is yes. Sony's data is that people are buying digital. I completely believe that. That doesn't mean that we cut off the physical market, and I think that's where that disconnect is coming from. But yeah, please let us know if you've got any questions. I'm keen to hear your thoughts. Like, please write back if you are anti-physical. I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well on that one. So send it through to podcast@leveluptimes.com, or leave a comment on our YouTube page. We pop the podcast on YouTube. It's also on Spotify. It's on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts every week. And we also put it on leveluptimes.com. So leave a comment there if you'd like as well. And give us your thoughts. That's the mailbag for the week. And I think that's a podcast. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Until next week, this has been the Level Up Times Show. I've been Adrian. And as always, save early, save often. Thanks for watching. See you next week.